Perfect. Okay. So welcome to another webinar in the Rig Run Recovery Zone series. I'm Shona King, and today I'm going to be hosting this session on behalf of Rig Run. So just a wee reminder that the session is being recorded and it'll be available to view on the Rig Run Recovery Zone website. If you are joining us live today, if you have any questions, just pop those in the chat and we'll try our best to get to these at the end. Otherwise, if you could turn your mics and cameras off, that would be great. So today we are joined by Mike Scotland, and he's the founder of a community called manUP, speakUP, and that aims to remove the stigma associated with mental health in the offshore and oil and gas industry. I know that Mike himself has got a number of years experience working offshore, so I think today's session is going to be really useful to a lot of people. Mike, I'm going to hand the reins over to you, but kind of before we start, I noticed there have been some statistics published just in the last few weeks related to rates of things like depression amongst offshore workers, and I just wondered if those had come as a surprise to you or not.
To be honest, I think when it comes to statistics, it's easy to throw numbers out there, and for me the most important thing is the things behind the statistics, the actual people themselves. So I think it's good to see numbers out there, because at least we're starting to share them. You know, there'll probably be multiple years now that there'll be statistics that have never been out there, never been known about, but now we can start to see things going out there, getting reported, getting recorded, and at least it gives us some focus to talk around them.
Absolutely, always helps raise awareness, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, I'll hand over to you, and you can tell people a little bit about your experience and your background. Thanks.
No, perfect. Thanks very much. And again, thanks to everyone from Rig Run that's invited me along to this Rig Run Recovery Zone. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Not just the focus on the physical aspect, but of course the focus on the mental aspect, which I guess is everyone's engine to the body, is their mind and their brain and their emotions and their feelings. So no, thank you very much for inviting me along. As you can see, I'm part of the mental health movement here. So I think there's a saying, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Well, I'm still there. I'm still doing that, and I'm still wearing the t-shirt. So I am Mike Scotland. I'm a founder of manUP, speakUP, which is probably an offshore and oil and gas movement. Basically, as previously said, to remove the stigma associated with mental health in the industry, which I feel for so many years it's been quite a heavy stigma. It's been suppressed, and I'm hoping that with just talking about mental health in the industry itself, it will start to raise awareness and start to raise some conversations around the subject of mental health. I have experienced and still experience mental health challenges, and what I want to do to kind of kick things off today is share a very raw and probably pretty heavy life experience with certainly my first known encounter of mental health, which was very difficult. It did come as a surprise and a shock. I do feel that there's probably quite a lot of people out there who's maybe experienced something similar, but are maybe just a little bit scared or worried to talk about it. I am a health and safety professional. So I'm one of the guys that try and say, do this, do that, avoid this and avoid that, etc. But I'm also somebody that believes in walking the walk and to lead by example. I want to be able to share personal experience with everyone online today to show that it is okay not to be okay, but what's not okay is to suffer in silence. So what I want to do is I want to take it back to 2019, when I was about to start my day. I was about to go out in the car with my baby boy, who was less than a year old at the time, and my ex-partner. We planned to go out to the shops in Aberdeen. I'd woke up just normal. There was nothing out of the difference for myself. Started my day just like every other day. Got ready, got the baby bag and everything sorted. Got in the car, went out in the car, and all of a sudden, we were approaching a set of traffic lights, and I started to feel the car itself almost close in on me. I started to breathe heavier. I started to feel like a panic, one of those overwhelming feelings that I wasn't really sure what was actually happening at the time. And I started to slide into the foothold of the car. I was obviously the passenger. I started to slide in the foothold of the car, and everything just kind of went a little bit dark. I could feel that the car was stopping as we approached a set of traffic lights at red, and all of a sudden I just felt like a tiny little person stuck inside my own head, which was really scary. I mean, if you think about normality and what you experience day to day, this was something that was petrifying. I became a little person stuck inside my head, screaming for help. And the next thing I knew, I just remember it was almost like big claws scratching the inside of my skull, as I screamed for help inside my own head, but no voice obviously coming out my mouth. And huge credit to my ex-partner. We decided not to go to the shops. And as I'm trapped inside my own head, we went to one of the local parks in Aberdeen. When we got to the car park, I kind of came to. I felt the car stop. I had opened my eyes. I took my seatbelt off. I opened the door, and I sprinted to. It was like a porta cabin, or you could say like a concrete shed where there was toilets. I sprinted over there, threw my back against the wall, fell down the wall onto my bum, and I just started crying. I had no idea what had happened to me, and I needed help. So my ex-partner, she got out of the car, she came running towards me, crouched down beside me, and as I was crying, I remember just looking up and saying, I need help, something's wrong, I need help. And that's exactly what we did. My first point was calling the doctor, which it was a very strange experience. I mean, how do you explain to someone that you were in the car started getting smaller, you then became a small person inside your head, screaming for help, but there was no noise, and then there was claws scratching the inside of your skull, and that you started crying? How do you explain that to a doctor, or how do you explain that to anyone? And it's almost like if you can think of trying to explain to someone that you're sat at home or sat in a rig, and all of a sudden you see pigs flying outside. Could you imagine trying to explain that to the person beside you, or one of your colleagues, friends, or family? How do you explain that and expect them to believe you? And also, how do you explain that in a way that they understand? And that's what it felt like for me. It was an alien experience. I struggled to process that myself, but then I had to try and explain it to someone else. But thankfully, when I spoke to the doctor, it was the first step, you could say, to making that feeling normal. Because that's what mental health is. Mental health isn't something that's strange or different or unknown. It is completely normal. But it's only normal if you speak about it. And that was the first step for myself, and got some reassurance that what I felt and experienced, I wasn't the first one to feel like that. And I certainly won't be the last one. But opening that door allowed me to walk through it. And see that there was help on the other side, and the doctor sat me down and discussed CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. That's a bit of a tongue twister, which was one option. There was medication, there was counselling, psychiatric therapy, which is speaking to a counsellor in one of the local hospitals. And it kind of gave me some food for thought to take home and go away with. But the first thing, just by speaking up, was that don't worry, that is normal. From that day, I spent the next few months pretty much going through my entire life memories to when I was back to 2 years old, and kind of retracing my steps to the present time, which was all the feelings that I'd maybe taken for granted and didn't understand, and looking really into it, taking it with a fine-tooth comb and going through every emotion, every experience I'd went through, and then questioning, why did I feel like that? What was my triggers? You know, when I used to play football at a really high level through my youth, but when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, I used to play football, and at the end of the game, they would always have penalty kicks, and both teams would line up, and I always found myself going second last. And I didn't even notice that until I got older and looked back and thought, why am I always going second last? And I know now, and I've known for some years now, that I actually struggled with that social anxiety. Being around a group of people, having the attention on me, I felt extremely, extremely uncomfortable. But by going second last, I knew that everyone would watch everyone before me. They'd kind of forget maybe about the last second or third person, and then everyone would watch the person to take the last penalty kick. And I wasn't aware of that until I went back in time and really started to look over things, and it then started to realize that I'd done that with so many things in life that I wasn't even aware of. Going to social events and trying to just blend in or disappear in the background. At school, I remember doing school talks, and I would try and go last or near the last people, so no one would really pay attention. Going to family events and trying not to speak to anyone, so I would maybe just disappear. And now I try and put myself in that firing line that I can't just live my life in fear anymore. I need to try and tackle it, and I need to speak up, because I know that other people feel like that as well. And it's important to realize that you're not the only person that feels like that. And when I look back to how I've been in life, I just wish more people spoke up about their thoughts, their feelings, to make others realize that it really is okay to feel these things, but it's not okay to keep it in. So for me, after that experience, looking back at myself for months, I kind of thought to myself, I need to do something about this. I need to share it with others. I need to speak up. And I found myself in a position where I either leave the industry because I struggled with going offshore. I struggled with the days before going offshore, with the fear of the difference of your surroundings, you know, being at home, being in your comfort zone, to then going offshore, being surrounded by lots of other people. It's difficult, or it was certainly difficult for me. It made me feel uncomfortable, but I liked my job. I liked the industry. So I thought I either leave the industry or I stay in the industry and I do something I can to try and raise awareness with mental health, to try and raise awareness for everybody out there that, you know, you're not going to be the only person that struggles being offshore, to normalize the conversation that there is more subjects than just sporting subjects, and weather subjects and food subjects that you can speak about in the tea shack, or when you're out cleaning the deck, or when you're up on the drill floor doing operations. You can actually say that it is okay if you have a bad day. It is okay that if you wake up and you struggle with things. And one thing I always say to people, if you have a 1 kilogram weight and you hold it it's not really that heavy. But if you hold it for a long period of time, that weight gets very, very heavy. You start to ache, your muscles get sore. And then all of a sudden, what started off as something small, it's starting to feel pretty big. And it's the same with your thoughts. It's the same with your emotions, with your fears. And carrying those around for an entire trip is difficult. But it's not difficult when you share it. You share the load. You speak about it. You let people know around you that if you're struggling, raise it. Have the conversation. Let the people know around you that you're maybe having a bad day. It doesn't mean that you can't function. It doesn't mean that you can't do your job. It just means that you're carrying that 1 kilogram weight and you want to put it down, and you want to highlight it to others. Because I know that in the industry, it can almost get frowned upon if you're struggling. You know, we always talk about the North Sea tigers, which I guess it always makes me laugh, especially now that the industry is going towards technology. It's going towards automated equipment. You know, it's coming on further from where it maybe used to be. We're progressing. Things are getting better. Conversations are maybe changing. And I think mental health should be progressing just the same as the same speed as the industry. And especially when it comes to mental health. And I think when you look at rig run itself or any physical activities offshore, it's always good to not just do it by yourself, but to do it in groups, to be surrounded by other people. Because a lot of the time we maybe do 12-hour shifts. We work hard during the 12 hours, but then that 12 hours off, you don't necessarily just have to go back to your room and isolate yourself in silence. You can do other activities, whether it is going for a jog, going on the rowing machine, doing some weights, doing something little but often. That will certainly allow you to have the conversation. And I think that's the most important part. It's not always just about the fitness, but about being in the situation and getting outside your comfort zone to have a conversation with someone else that you can maybe reflect on. And again, it's all about lightening that load, about sharing that 1 kilogram weight and dispersing it amongst others to make you feel more comfortable, to make you feel more relaxed. And I've certainly noticed from myself since I started the movement of manUP, speakUP, and talking about mental health out there on the rigs and in the oil and gas industry itself, more and more people are starting to talk about it and see that it really is okay to talk about these sort of things and normalizing the conversation. But that all comes back to everybody who's here today. You're here today to see a talk on mental health, and hopefully in time, these sort of things that I come to and I talk about mental health almost won't be needed. I mean, that's the goal, is that rather than me speaking about my experience to everybody out there today, is that everyone will be able to speak about their own personal experience to each other. Or if you don't have your own experience to do with mental health challenges, which again is completely normal, but it's about understanding that there is mental health challenges out there with people that they might not talk about all the time, but being aware that your actions might affect others in a negative way. And that's another thing that we want to try and avoid. And it goes well beyond the oil and gas industry and the offshore environment. And it's out there in all industries, is that we need to be accountable for our own actions, because when it comes to mental health, words can really damage people, just like equipment can damage you physically. You know, and it's a fine line between health and safety and mental health, because when it comes to health and safety, we always focus on that physical aspects of things where it may damage us personally. But mental health, we can all get damaged with that, and a lot of it can be to do with words. which comes from the individuals. And it's all about creating that safe space, that safe environment, which goes all the way deep rooted to culture, about talking about things in a positive aspect, not hiding away from any negatives, but more taking the initiative to turn a negative into a positive. How can we learn from this? How can we support each other? If we do make a mistake, how can we make others feel better about coming forth with maybe doing something wrong, and bringing them up instead of pushing them down? Because that's what really affects people, is the conversations that put us down. And it's them sort of conversations that is affecting a lot of those around us mentally, damaging us, putting us off doing the job again, putting us off speaking up in a toolbox talk, putting us off talking about something in a pre-tour meeting, because of that fear. And again, it all goes about, it's just speaking up. And for me personally, what I've noticed, especially maybe in the past couple of years, is mental health is starting to get the attention I feel it deserves in the industry. And that's why I'm here today, because mental health is getting brought into the industry more and more and more. But it's okay having big posters on an oil rig saying mental health. It's okay doing campaigns for a week every year. It's okay talking about mental health awareness day or mental health day once a year. But it's the conversations that follow on from that that is the real importance. The conversations out there on the rigs, that is the real importance, about speaking to people, knowing when your colleague's either feeling down or something's going wrong. But you can only ever find that if you have the conversation. And that's why when we talk about under the hard hat, we talk about the exterior, we wear our PPE to protect us. But sometimes the most damaged part is the part that you can see, and that could be under the hard hat, that could be someone's mental health. And we'll only ever know what's really going on under there as if we have the conversation. And if you're watching this today, one thing I kind of want to put out there to everyone, and it's it's something that it made me reflect a lot when I tried to explain mental health to my friends and family, which I found very difficult because it is something personal. But if you can think of your favorite color, okay? So just have a little think, what's your favorite color? My favorite color is red, okay? And if you think you just met someone who was born blind, who's never been able to see anything before, if you can try and explain your favorite color to this person, but not only that, you have to be able to explain it in a way that only they understand. That's kind of what it's like explaining mental health to people when you struggle. It's very, very, very difficult and almost impossible. But you'll never know unless you have the conversation. And for me, that's the biggest thing that I wanted to bring to today, was it really, really is okay not to be okay. But what's not okay is to suffer in silence. And when it comes to the oil and gas industry and that offshore environment, we're very fortunate enough to be surrounded by people every day, which isn't always the case. When you're onshore, you might be in your house, you might be left alone, you might not have any interaction for days on end, weeks sometimes, maybe months or maybe longer. But when you're offshore, you utilize the people around you. That is your second family. Interact with them, speak to them, speak up, because you're not going to be the only person that struggles out there. And the more you can speak up about it, the more you will find support. You really will be okay. You just need to start speaking up.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for sharing your very personal and kind of raw experience with mental health, and kudos to you for having the courage to speak up, because sometimes it isn't easy to do. but you've obviously been encouraging other people to do the same, and to speak to those around them. How do you think, the last few years have been a little bit unusual? How do you think COVID, the pandemic and the associated lockdowns has affected people's mental health?
Wow, where do you start? No, again, like I say, it's, when I talk about manUP, speakUP, I always say positive energy, good to go. And sometimes you get put back as you can't always be positive, but you can always try. And I think when it comes to COVID, the lockdown, the restrictions, of course it's going to have a negative impact. Of course it is. People lost their lives all over the world. But for me, what I take from that is I saw a lot of positive conversations. I saw a lot of people interacting on a different level with their friends and family that they've never had to do before, because you can only hide so much behind a mask. But when that mask falls off and you're exposed, you can't hide anymore. And I think although lockdown put people behind the screen, our screens were then interacted with people from all over the world. We could then really have a true conversation, and I guess we couldn't hide from each other. You can close your door and not speak to somebody for weeks, but when you have no option to open the door, you have to turn elsewhere. And I guess it has a detrimental part with people that maybe can't open up. But again, I think it's generated a lot of positives, especially because it's given mental health that magnifying glass. So for me, there's a lot more positives from it than there is negatives. It will be controversial, totally get that. But I think you need to pull these positives and embrace it. You can't change the negatives from the past now. We just need to move forward.
I think mental health is definitely a topic that people are talking about an awful lot more these days, and that can only be a positive thing, can't it? I have a question for you. You talk a lot about speaking up and encouraging people to disclose how they're feeling to others, but I wondered if you had any advice for the receivers of that information. So it's not always easy to know what to say when someone talks to you about their mental health. So if someone's telling you, they're not feeling great, or they're feeling a bit anxious or a bit depressed, it can be hard to know what to say to that person. I just wondered if you had any advice for the listener, for the receiver of that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I always say I can never advise people what to say or what to do, but less is more. I think that's the biggest challenge when people do have someone to speak to them about mental health. They feel a little bit worried themselves. What happens if they say the wrong thing? But to be perfectly honest, is explore. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to speaking to someone, but feel honored, feel privileged that individual wants to speak to you. And I always say it has to be down to your approach, and exploring that thing. A lot of the time people will always have the answers in themselves, but you need to guide them to that. You cannot do anything for someone. You can't take away that thought processes. You can't take away those challenges, because you are not expected to know the answer. The answer will always be inside the individual somewhere, and it's all about guiding them. Okay, so what's making you feel like that? What do you think's possibly caused that? How you're feeling just now, what do you think can maybe make you feel better? And it's getting them to say it out loud. When it comes to thoughts are always contained unless they're spoken about. And some people won't listen to anyone, but it needs to come from themselves. And that's all to do with exploring. But for me, the biggest thing is approach. Don't be too quick to come up with an answer. You don't need to. And you're not going to have that cure. You're not going to have them special words to remove everything. Just be open, and always explore.
So instead of trying to fix the problem, just listen, ask lots of open questions, and and help that person to explore their feelings a bit more.
100%, absolutely.
Okay, super. Thanks for your time today, Mike. Just one final question. If people want to know a little bit more about your community manUP Speak Up, how would they go about doing that?
Just talking about mental health.
Good answer.
Because it's a movement itself. There's no secret community here. It's for absolutely everybody out there. And just know that the terminology manUP shouldn't be seen as a negative. It should be seen as a positive. When it comes to physical activities, we can do anything we can, but the biggest challenges is always going to be the ones locked inside our head. But just make sure that you're aware that it really is okay to be okay, and just continue the progress and movement of mental health, and keep spreading the positivity out there.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Mike. Appreciate your time today.
No problem at all, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. That was fantastic, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise.